Okay, so you guys know how Spotify has Wrapped and YouTube Music has Recapped and a bunch of other things have a bunch of other things? Well, I thought, why don't we do one for MMOs? So with that in mind, hello everybody and welcome to the MMO Recap 2024. In this video, we're gonna go over all the big MMOs that released in 2024, available to play right now that you should absolutely consider checking out. Hopefully, through this video, you might find an MMO that you didn't know existed or at least haven't tried yet. Now, I'm not gonna spend 20 minutes per MMO because that would kind of just be wasting your time, but I am gonna try and cover all the important aspects of each game so that you can get as clear of an idea of what they're all about as possible. Also, I'm only really gonna go over the good things about each game because I kinda wanna end the year on a positive, hopeful note and not a sour one. But if you do wanna hear the positives and negatives in detail of each game, I've covered all of them in this channel before, so I'll link those videos in the description below if you wanna check those out. Feel free, as always, to skip ahead to the games you wanna know the most about and make sure to subscribe to my channel below for more MMO related content. Okay, enough preamble. Let's dive into it. So the first game on our list is Tarisland. This was a Chinese MMO that had a global release on the 21st of June, and it's basically a cross-platform World of Warcraft-like game. It comes with pretty great visuals, which is especially impressive for a cross-platform game you can play on your phone, and a world that really encourages exploration. On top of that, it has a genuinely amazing soundtrack created by Emmy-winning composer Russell Brower, and it complements that world perfectly. Now the combat is tab target and the classes are honestly not the hardest to learn, but each class is very unique in its playstyle, and so there is actually a lot of variety between the classes. In fact, each class comes with 2 different specializations, and the difference between specializations is also really massive. So this essentially means that there's actually twice as many classes as it says in the game. Plus, the PvE is mostly focused around boss fights and party dungeons, all with their own unique mechanics to learn and perfect, which is a great thing to keep you interested for a pretty long time. And anyway, speaking of dungeons, the gameplay of this game isn't focused at all on repeatedly killing mobs. In fact, it focuses on running those dungeons over and over again. But the good thing is that the drop rates from these dungeons are actually really high. So the overall grind level is honestly very low for an MMO, like surprisingly so. It's easy to not play for a while, jump back in and catch up relatively quickly because all you really need to do to stay up to date is run a few dungeons. Lastly, while there is undeniably pay to win in this game, because denying it would be pretty stupid, because gearing is so easy to do, it's honestly not as big of a deal as you'd think, which is pretty nice. All that said, Tarisland is a genuinely fun MMO that I honestly didn't expect to be as fun as it is. So I would pretty much definitely recommend checking it out, even if it is just for a few hours. The next game I want to talk about is Once Human. This was also a Chinese MMO, but instead of the typical fantasy magic-based world, Once Human is a post-apocalyptic survival shooter MMO released on the 9th of July. It comes with some of the best visuals in this entire list, and even more so than that, phenomenal best-in-class lighting. Really, no other game on this list has filled up my screenshots folder nearly as much as Once Human has. I stop to take a picture like once every 20 minutes. I have PTSD from God Rays. It's that pretty. On top of all that, it also has one of the best designed worlds in any MMO I've played. The overall aesthetic might not really hit for you because obviously not everybody likes post-apocalyptic worlds, but you can't argue the thought that they've put into it. Everything is seamless and connected together perfectly via a fantastic road system, which is doubly good because driving vehicles is a massive part of this game. Then, when you do get where you want to go to fight monsters, the monsters are designed amazingly. They're horrifying but also unbelievably cool across the board. In fact, I would say that Once Human has some of the best designed bosses and monsters in general I've ever seen. But that's just the combat side of things. When you're not fighting monsters, you can spend your time in Once Human building your house and hanging out in it, because this game comes with an extensive construction and crafting system to play around with. This on the screen now is a shameless plug for my house, which I built from scratch, and pretty much every player gets to build their own however they want it to look, which is genuinely awesome. And then to top all of this off, the game has pretty much zero pay to win, like none at all. Everything you can buy from the store is entirely cosmetic, and there's absolutely no way to convert real money into a boost or advantage. Even the battle pass is entirely cosmetic, which is something super rare in today's day and age. I recommend this game wholeheartedly to anyone who likes, or at least doesn't mind, the post-apocalyptic theme or shooter MMOs. Those two factors should pretty much be the only things that hold you back from playing this game at all. It's pretty much my favorite release of the year, and in my opinion, it's one of the best MMOs we've ever gotten. So definitely go check this one out. The third game on our list was probably the biggest release of this year, and that of course was Throne and Liberty. This was a Korean MMO that had already been out in Korea, South not North, for a year before making its global release on the 26th of September. This game, just like Once Human, is unbelievably gorgeous, with views worth screenshotting everywhere you go. The world itself is also amazingly detailed and full of really cool biomes, monsters, and towns that are laid out in a way that creates a cohesive and believable world. It also comes with a super detailed character creation menu, sort of like the one in Black Desert Online, and while it's not quite as good, it still leagues better than most other MMOs out there. Now, in terms of combat, Throne and Liberty doesn't have your typical class system. Instead, you get your skills based on the weapons you have equipped. You can equip 2 weapons at a time and switch between weapons fairly freely, though you will obviously have to then get new gear to match the new playstyle. Speaking of playstyles, each weapon combination actually has a pretty unique playstyle. There is some overlap, but for the most part, the combinations are different enough and distinct enough that you basically end up with close to 50 different playstyles and basically 50 different classes to choose from, which is insane but also amazing. Combat itself is a bit of a mix between tab targeting and action combat, and is for the most part quite fun, even if it's not particularly difficult to learn. For PvE, you've got loads of dungeons with really well designed bosses and unique mechanics to learn and perfect, and in PvP, which is actually the main focus for this game, you've got a few different things you can do. First, you've got small scale PvP, which is basically your 1v1s or 2v2s or something along those lines. Then you've got guild PvP, which is basically guilds fighting each other. And finally, you've got these massive large-scale siege battles that involve hundreds of players. In fact, it's that last one where Throne and Liberty really shines, because despite the insane scale of these battles, the performance of the game remains fantastic, even on relatively weak hardware. To me, that's kind of like magic, because these battles get insane. I'm not exaggerating. You're talking about hundreds of players, sometimes even thousands, and performance stays relatively great, which is kind of ridiculous. All in all, it's not really surprising why Throne and Liberty was the biggest new MMO that came out this year. It's beautiful as all hell, it's got a ton of content to play through, and it's got the best large-scale PvP I've ever seen in any MMO. So if any of those things sound good to you, you just have to give this game a go. Fourth on our list is the one MMO that I was probably the most excited for personally, and that was Brighter Shores. This is a new MMO by the creators of the original RuneScape, Andrew Gower and his brothers Paul and Ian Gower, released on the 6th of November. As you might have expected, Brighter Shores has a ton of similarities to old school RuneScape. For starters, it has a fantastic questing system that is deep and has quests that are honestly really well written and expansive. You could be running around, run into a random NPC and start a quest chain that takes you hours to complete, which is really great to see in any MMO. However, the main attraction, of course, is the massive skilling system. Just like in old school RuneScape, Brighter Shores has a huge amount of skilling you can do. There's the tried and tested ones like smithing, cooking, fishing, etc. And then there's also brand new creative ones like detective, merchant, and so many more. On top of the massive number of skills, they bounce off each other really well too, with the materials and products obtained from one being used in another and vice versa. This game is still in early access, so it's missing a few things, but even then, it has a ton of content to play through, so I wouldn't really let that label put you off at all. Now, Brighter Shores is a subscription-based game, similar again to old school RuneScape. This means that some parts of the game are free to play, but then eventually you'll need to get that subscription to access the rest of it. I won't lie, this game has a ton of issues that it needs to look into, but again, I don't want to be negative in this video. But feel free to check out my full review in the description below for all of that information. Regardless though, I would still fully recommend trying out this game. Again, it is free to play for a good while before it starts needing that subscription. So if you like old school RuneScape or games like it, definitely do give this one a go. The final game on our list is one that had been delayed for years and years before finally coming out in early access this year, and that was, of course, Corepunk. This is a steampunk, manapunk, cyberpunk, dieselpunk game that was released on the 26th of November. Now, all of that sounds like a lot of genres to mix, but really, all of these punk genres are pretty fine to mix together, and Corepunk does that mixing really, really well. The world itself is really, really cool and is one that I genuinely enjoyed exploring for the aesthetic alone. It's a big departure from the typical fantasy genre, so that adds a new layer of freshness and excitement to the entire thing. The class system is also quite interesting, where your class is actually your race or culture, and your skills are based on your chosen weapon mastery or specialization. Each culture, so each class, has 3 specializations to choose from, and they play somewhat similarly but differently enough to add a ton of variety and opportunity to keep the gameplay fresh, since you can switch between them pretty freely. On top of this, Corepunk does something that a lot of people have been asking for a long time, and that is for MMOs to stop holding your hand and make questing too easy. A lot of people find that modern MMOs are way too involved in questing and basically guide you to do everything step by step, and that kind of just takes the fun out of it. Corepunk not only lets go of your hand, it kind of cuts it off. This difficulty is going to be off-putting to some people, but a lot of people are gonna love it. If you're a fan of having to figure out all the quests for yourself with minimal help, you will probably love this system. Beyond that though, the game is very MOBA-like, similar kind of to Albion Online. This means that you click to move and combat is action-based, and honestly, it's really fun. There's a lot of potential for skill expression even with the relatively few skills to pick from, and the game gives you a lot of room to think before you strike. Plus, combat is kinda hard. A lot of MMOs have insanely easy combat in the early game, but again, remember, this game cuts your hand off. It's hard. You can die to anything at any time if you aren't careful, which I actually really like because it keeps the game interesting throughout instead of it just being a rush to end game where the actual game starts or whatever. Aside from combat, the crafting system is also pretty good, with a good number of materials to gather and a lot of different things to make with those materials, which means that you're gonna have a lot of content to do for a long time. Now, this game is buy to play, but on the other hand, like Once Human, Corepunk has absolutely zero pay to win. Everything you can purchase for real money is entirely cosmetic, and there's pretty much no way to get ahead by dropping a few American dollars or European euros or Korean won or pretty much any other currency you can think of. Overall, I highly recommend this game to anyone who likes a MOBA-like MMO and an MMO with a pretty high difficulty level, at least relative to other MMOs. And there you have it. That was your MMO recap for 2024. All in all, 5 new MMOs that are genuinely fun in a year is actually kind of great. I mean, maybe these games didn't really hit for you, and honestly, that's fair and that's okay. But truth be told, I'm just glad there's new games coming out at all. For a while before this year, we were in such a massive drought that I honestly thought the genre would die off before long. So to see a new growing interest in it is something I totally welcome. But okay, what do you guys think? Were there any releases this year that you particularly liked? What do you think about the state of the genre in general? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or just flame me in the comments below. That's fine too. Just I'll take any interaction. Either way, stay tuned for more MMO content, and especially a list of all the MMOs coming out next year for us all to be excited for. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Oh, and Merry Christmas. If you celebrate it. Oh, Happy Holidays if you don't. Hanukkah, maybe? I don't know.